Hello friends, welcome to my channel Tech IT Insights. Today I'm going to discuss about the ADM phases of TOGAF architecture framework, how it works, and each phases what are the key inputs and output, and the how it works, and each phases we'll see in details in the each phases wise. So first is, if you see this ADM life cycle, which is ADM diagram we can say. So preliminary phases, and these are the A to H different phases in this diagram you can see. In the in between, these all phases are interconnected with this requirement management. Throughout the all life cycles it will works in the each phases to connect with that requirement management. So first phase A is architecture vision. You should keep remember this ADM life cycle is part of part 1 exam, and part 2 is the scenario basis exam. As I told you, the part 1 is a basic fundamental architecture point of view. You should understand the complete ADM life cycle architecture vision, business architecture. C is information system architecture, technology architecture, opportunity and solution, migration planning, implementation governance, architecture change management. So these are the ADM life cycle, which is very key role perform in the entire TOGAF architecture framework. So now let's go to the each phases. What is the main key inputs? It has a very huge documentation, but I made very clear, which is main objective point of how it works. We can see this. The preliminary phases. See the it is architecture setting up with the starting of the framework phases architecture capability. The objective is here first is prepare the organization undertaking of TOGAF or not, and then define the framework, architecture framework and principle, and enabling the governance and support model for the and the organization's point of view. The here if you see that the first point, key activities and key concept to cover that. So artifacts and the main importance, what is the output of for the each phases, it will ask in interview point of view also. And then your questioning, when you clear the exam, they will ask the each phases how you are going to preliminary phases, how you are define your architecture, they will ask in uh, the TOGAF examination point of view. See, the key activities are define the organizational, and the identify and establish the architecture principles, and define a relationship between managing the frameworks and establish the architecture governance structure, define the tools and techniques which are in the initial phase they are defining. Now, if what is enterprise architecture capability? Architecture principles, which is nothing but a business data technology defined. The stakeholder identification, architecture board of members, and then the key output is principal tailoring the architecture framework, initiate the architecture repository, and architecture principles in the first phase will enabling. If you see this diagram, we'll understand the objective, key definitions and key concepts. So key activities, what are the activities you are going to do? The key artifacts principle, the documentation tailoring the framework, initiate the repository, that is preliminary phases, and the key concept is stakeholder identification, the architecture board, define a framework, establish governance principle will be happened here in the first phase, preliminary phases. Now coming to the, now we go for the phase A to H. How it will works in each phases, we'll see that. So phase A is architecture vision. So what we are trying to achieve this in phase A, it tells about the high level vision of the solution and up to obtain the approval of to proceed. How it is scope and constraint and expectation of define the architecture vision point of view only we are declaring that. Now the activities here identify the stakeholder and their concerns and the requirement and define the KPIs and meet the define the statement of architecture works. And the here it is very important in the architecture vision point of to uh, architecture vision documentation in the key concept point of view in the stakeholder map who care about what the value the value chain diagrams, the business scenario techniques and capability assessment will happen in the architecture vision. The next, the output is statement of architecture works approved. Statement of works approved in architecture vision phase A. Architecture vision communication plan. Define the requirement business principles. A request for the architecture work if a extend the sponsors here. If you see the diagram, what are the objective key activities concerns. Artifacts output is statement of architecture. We can say the architecture vision communication refine the architecture here. That architecture vision is key role performed here. Now the business architecture. So how does business works? It as important as develop the baseline architecture, business architecture, develop the target to be architecture as is to be. So what is the defined with the business architecture will tell us the identify the gap between the baseline and target architecture is business architecture. Define the roadmap component. The key activities here baseline architecture describe that develop the target architecture of the business architecture point of view for perform the gap analysis and define a candidate roadmap component, resolve the impact across the architecture landscape. The key concept here, the business capability map, value streaming map, and organization actor catalog, and business process diagram, and the business use cases. It talk about the all the business related only, the gap analysis techniques, what we are going to apply, that will happen in the phase B. So the output is very important. What is the output of outcome comes here? The baseline of business architecture it will come. The target business architecture description and gap analysis. Business architecture component architecture roadmap we can see here. So identify the gaps, select the reference model, key concept, and we can see perform the gap analysis and resolve the impact, define the candidate, develop the business architecture. We can say here that is the very important when you do the business architecture. So business architecture output augments roadmap, the target architecture business architecture output document of target, baseline gap analysis, perform the gap analysis, resolve the impact. If you see this diagram how it is happen in the phase B. Now let's go for the phase C. What is the phase C? Phase C is a information system architecture. So here there are two, it talks about the two level, what data and application. So we can say here data architecture point of view, application architecture point of view, it talks about the two in the phases, like two phases we can say in the information system architecture point of view. So data architecture, what is the type of data source in your data in the organization? Create a baseline and target data architecture. So if you see that previously we say that baseline of the business, it talk about the business oriented, target is also business architecture, but here the baseline of the data and the to be target data architecture point of view, it talks about the information system architecture point of view. The key concept is develop the data architecture model and the define the data entities relationship and create the data management policies in the key activities will happen in the phase C. So key concept is logical data, physical data, and data models, okay, and data component log, get log, data life cycle, as a master data management and data it will talk about here. The output is data entity business function matrix, concept of the data diagrams, data migration plan, how it is happened in the information system only, data migration plan. So application, so here also define the application system needed, map the application business, how your business baseline of the creation, catalog extensions the application point of view, define the target application portfolio, analyze the application interaction, application portfolio catalog, application communication diagram, application use cases here. So SOA and API related concept of how your application integrate with the communication with the function framework, gap analysis, how it will happen, that will happen in the data architecture point of information system. So what is baseline and target? So future and existing. So evaluation data, data model, and feature is application portfolio, so that are related to any component how you are mapping. These are the application mapping, current data, data deadlocks, and this logical model, master model. It will talk about the information system architecture. Okay. Now let's go for the phase D, technology architecture. So technology architecture, what is technology you're going to do in the organization? So do you fit your technology in your business model or not? That assessment will happen in the technology architecture point of view. They map the software and hardware component, application, data, and business function. So this is how your software and hardware will map. That will happen in the technology architecture point of view. Develop the business and target technology architecture, define the technology component and their relationship, select the relevant technology architecture viewpoint, identify the candidate architecture roadmap component, conduct the gap analysis. The key concept is technology portfolio catalogs, environment and local diagram, form diagram, cloud architecture point of view, network infrastructure, technology standards. Key artifacts output is technology standard catalog, technology portfolio, system technology matrix, gap analysis. In the here it will happen in the technology architecture here. So objective, key concept, activity, key artifacts. Object is map the component and develop portfolio catalog environment. Key activities, define the component, select the view map, identify roadmap. Key artifact, standard catalog, portfolio, catalog matrix, gap analysis, roadmap here. Now opportunity and solution. How do we get this? So how we are going to do this opportunity solution? See, the main object is review all the phases, whatever happened in the previous phases, B, C, D, which we can say like a B dot, okay, and then we can see the identify the delivery projects, program portfolio, generate the architecture roadmap, define the make, buy, reuse the decisions, and the key concept of work packages, transit architecture concept, implementation factor, and business values, techniques and matrix, portfolio categorization. In this phase, we can identify the key artifacts. Output is architecture roadmap, transit of the architecture if needed, implementation, migration strategies. So to be ready with the next phase, which is phase F, you are going to write that you should make readiness of the in this gap analysis to be happen in the phase E. So opportunity, what type of opportunity you are going to? Here you can see this. Identify the delivery vehicles and generate the architecture roadmap. Objective, this is the main objective. And key activities are review the gaps, how you are giving. The artifacts are the architecture roadmap, artifacts, and this will happen work packages here, key concept here. Now let's go for the phase F, migration plan. How do we plan for the journey? So migration plan, phase F. So phase F migration plan, how do we can plan the journey? So finalize the architecture roadmap. Objective is concern coordinate with the management framework with portfolio program project related, ensure this business value is realized. This migration plan, how do we plan this? The key activities: prioritize this roadmap, confirm the transition of the architecture, create the implementation migration plan. So access the resource requirement, cost and timelines, perform the risk analysis will happen in the migration plan only. The concept to cover here: benefit of realization techniques, project interoperability, risk and issues management, how TOGAF align with the PMO's principle, agile method, and then finalize the architecture roadmap, implementation migration plan, transit the architecture in Seattle, architecture concept. So this will happen in the migration plan. You can see the each diagram how it will represent here. Finalize the roadmap and ensure the business values. Confirm the transition of architecture. Ensure that a smooth transition, and then access the resource requirement and cost and timeline. Coordination with the management. Prioritize the projects. Create the implementation migration and perform the risk analysis here. So now you can see implementation governance. Are we building it right? So ensure that confirmation implementation architecture, perform the architecture overnight and handle the architecture contract. So confirm the scope of with the development architecture, identify the development resource and skills, guide the development and resource, perform the enterprise architecture component review, handle the change request, key concept cover, architecture contract, compliance review, dispensation, architecture governance, key artifacts, architecture contract. That will happen in the implementation governance. Are we building in the right place, or that will happen in the contract, stakeholder concerns and the agreement which are missing artifacts, which will add in this phase, G phase. So here objective is ensure the implementation align with the stakeholders, architecture standards, stakeholder concerns. Key activities involve the confirmation, scope, identify the resource and guide the deployment. Key concept is contracts, as I said, compliance review, and this all will happen. Key artifacts are included as signed contract, complaints, assessment and change request. Next, ready for the output. We can see the complaint, assessment, change request, readiness, output will come, architecture compliance recommendation. Now last phase, which is very important, architecture change management. How do we keep it relevant here? That ensure the architecture continue to meet the business needs. It makes that what are the phases will happen, the business needed or not, what are the agreed or not, that will happen in the change management. Manage the changes to architecture in the controlled way and decide when to initiate the new ADM cycles. Key activities: establish the architecture monitoring process, decide the type of change request, access the change request for impact, update the architecture roadmap or update the architecture repository, we can say. The key concept to cover change management process: type of changes, simplification, incremental, re-architecture. This will happen. The architecture complaints, monitoring, technology change. So business change request, and when to trigger the new ADM cycles. The artifacts output is architecture update, new request for architecture works if needed, architecture repository update, change impact assessment will happen in the change request, architecture change management. In the last phase, this is called as H, phase H. So control the changes, you can see monitoring that and change here, impact assessment, repository update, new ADM cycle, business needs. This will happen in the your exam point of view also. They will ask, the question is type of changes, simplification, incremental, re-architecture. That's called as change management. So we can see technology change trigger, business change trigger, when to trigger in the new cycle, that we called as new request for architecture works. That's called a happen output here. Now in the last, which is in middle, as I said, requirement management. This is central phase of all the phases. It always active in all the phases. So it's a hub connected with each phases, capture the store and managing all the phases architecture requirement, ensure the requirement are into the in out every phases, handle the requirement changes in their impact of each phases, and it will update immediately in their requirement management. That's called as R, requirement management central phase in the ADM phase. So we can see the ADM phase wise, all the phases what will happen, the key artifacts, key concepts, and key activities objective. So main object is central hub requirement phase, preliminary phase, prepare the organization for TOGAF. So phase A, develop the high level vision. Phase B, develop the business baseline and target. Define a data and application. So map the components, phase technology, and opportunity, identify delivery vehicles and generate the roadmap. Phase migration plan, finalize the roadmap, control the framework. See, phase H, ensure the confirm the performance over, it ensure this architecture meet the business needed in the last phase. So key activities, what are the key concept will happen. So here if you see this, define the identification stakeholder goals, and select the model, okay, and then develop the data model catalogs, which is happen here. So define the component, select the viewpoints, technology. So review the gap analysis and technology. If you see that portfolio catalog environment, work packages will happen in the, so which phase, that is called as phase E. Implementation and migration plan will happen in phase F. Architecture control, complaint review, change management requests will happen in the phase H. So these are the key artifacts output will happen in the technology, data, baseline, statement, architecture. These are all phases. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for support. Please subscribe.